The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to On Cue. I'm your host, Eric Olson. On today's program, we will get the latest update on blue zone cities in our region. We'll meet author Janet Groth, who just wrote a book about her experience rubbing elbows with the famous at the New Yorker magazine after growing up in Austin. And of course, we'll hear from the Vision 2020 team. Stay with us for On Cue.
From KSMQ Television in Austin, this is On Cue, connecting interesting issues and interesting people. On Cue.
Blue zones are regions in the world where people have found the right formula for living longer, healthier lives. Dan Buettner is bringing these principles to others around the world. Two communities in our region have been designated blue zone cities, Albert Lea and Mason City. Our two guests are here today to give us an update on how being a blue zone city can change us for the better. Welcome Angela Determan and Ellen Kehr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up from Albert Lea, we're going to talk about Albert Lea and Mason City. Mason City is where it's happening now.
We're in that process now.
We just got Albert Lea kind of done with blue zones. We've heard a lot about the successful project there, but now we're starting a new one beginning November, a big kickoff coming, right, Angie? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, on November 30th, we will be launching the Blue Zones project in Mason City. Since May 4th, when we were announced as a Blue Zones destination community, we are not a Blue Zones city. We're in the process of becoming a Blue Zones certified community. And so right now we're putting together a blueprint, which would be the strategic plan. So our Power 9 board, 15 members of community leaders, are working to put together a strategic plan to help us achieve this certification to improve the well-being of our community.
And this will be something that, as an Albert Lea, it's supposed to show the vitality of a community and improve the wellness of folks,
right,
Ellen?
Right, because really it's well-being. I mean, there's more to a person's health than actual physical health. Well-being and vitality are also about emotional, social connections. It's our entire lives that we're really looking at. It isn't just physical activity.
Okay.
That's a portion of it, but it's about many things. It's about family and friends and volunteering and eating food that's good for you and getting natural movement and exercise. It's a complete package that gives you vitality in your life.
So how did Mason City, Angie, get the notion and get the cooperation together to get this ball rolling?
Well, about a year ago, the Governor Branstad, challenged our state to become the healthiest state. And so through his challenge, the Blue Zones project was presented to us, and it was a competitive process. And our community felt like it was something that we could embrace and that we really felt would be positive influence for our community. So we developed a planning committee and started the application process, and we're lucky enough to be one of the first 4 communities chosen, along with Spencer, Waterloo, and Cedar Falls.
Wonderful. And is this something that, I mean, in my naivete, but will this be something that there'll be a sign when you come into Albert Lea or Mason City, we are a blue zone city? Is it something that you will promote as a marketing piece about a community?
It is an economic driver. Becoming a Blue Zones certified community really is something that work sites are going to look at when you're looking at expanding or looking at a community that you want to bring a business to. It really is advantageous to know that we really care enough about our workers, our citizens, to improve their overall well-being, makes better employees, and so it's a win-win for our community.
And Ellen Kehr, you worked on the Albert Lea project, and now moving down to Mason City with organizational work. You interact with businesses and
grocery stores and
try
restaurants
to get them to say, we're going to be part of this also.
Yes, and to certify. Because in Albert Lea, we did not have all the resources that Mason City and the other 3 demonstration sites have. We didn't have certificates that you could hang in the store, although we do have a plaque at the Vitality Center that says that remember, we were the pilot project. We were quite literally in Albert Lea, the test to see, could you really do this? Does this really work? Could you go into a community of average people, because that's why we were chosen, not because we were good, because we were average in everything. In obesity rates, smoking rates. If you could go to a place like Albert Lea and change the environment and change people's habits, then probably you could go to other places. So we had a different, we worked on the Power 9, but we didn't have as many resources as we have to work with in Mason City.
And so your average, you didn't have an identified need necessarily, because Angie, I like Mason City, you know, I mean, so it's not like we have this gap or a problem that we need solving. It's just to make things better.
Well, we do have a problem, and the problem is that really the United States as a nation, Iowa as a state, Minnesota as a state, our well-being is really not where it should be to have a healthy lifestyle. And Gallup and Healthways went together and did a well-being index. There was really no way to measure that about 5 years ago. So they developed a process, and we know that although Iowa and Minnesota, you know, are better than some states as far as our overall well-being, we don't score well. No one really scores well. The average is, you know, really a failing grade if you look at it according to academic standards for the grading. And so it's to really assess where we're at and improve our overall well-being.
Okay, but not anything specifically below norm, or it's a national problem.
Right. Yes, the top is a C.
Right.
The top is a C, and then everything goes below that.
Okay.
So there are no A's and B's.
So will you be asking residents openly to help us or become part of it? Do they sign up to be a team member, or what do we do?
Actually, we are asking everybody to participate, to become certified in the area of individuals or citizens in Mason City. We need 4,592 people to not only take the pledge, which is going online to the bluezonsproject.com and registering and pledging that they will be involved with the Blue Zones Project, but they have to do an action item, because we know pledging really is not going to improve our well-being. We need to act on what we need within our lives to improve upon, and there's a very varied menu of choices that you can choose. So some people might feel like their overall well-being, as far as maybe physical health, is really where it should be, but maybe their social connections aren't quite where they feel that, you know, they're not really content with how their social life is, or maybe it's you know, they don't have a sense of purpose. And so there's various ways that they can get involved, but one action item needs to be acted on.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is. It's.
And the business side of it, where does the community and the retail side, do they have a role to play in this also? Like, what products do we choose to sell our customers? Does it go to that direction?
Actually, the work that I'm doing with the work sites is about the employees, not the product.
Ah, okay.
And you know, obviously, I love work sites. I love work sites, and I believe that that particular sector, which has always been considered just an economic driver. I mean, if you look at business and industry, the leadership that they display, the quality of work, those leaders, they can drive an economy, they can drive a vitality movement. And that's my feeling about work sites. And if you get into work sites and employees and employers work together to change the environment in the work sites, that has a ripple effect. Employees go home, they have children, and those children go to school. And then we will also be doing the Blue Zones project in the schools. The idea is it's an umbrella that goes across all sectors of our community in Mason City, and you do it all at the same time. And I think that work sites will be a huge driver in the transformation of Mason City. They were in Albert Lea, and they will be in Mason City also.
Yeah, is that the hope too in the schools as well?
Absolutely. The schools and the work site really are the leaders, because it will be difficult to go out and do it, one individual at a time. But by really changing the lifestyle of people at their work site, at schools, and really starting to just make the healthier choice the easy choice, then we start to see a transformation, a tipping point in our community that really then it becomes second nature to us. And so that's how we will really achieve certification for individuals in our community, is by having those work sites and schools help us.
So I know I'm going to end up not eating potato chips after this. Am I going to be eating an apple instead of?
No, actually.
It's not a food choice thing. That's not the only one I know.
Actually, it is. It is a food choice thing. And what we haven't realized we've been doing to ourselves is we think we have choices that we do not have. The Blue Zones is not about taking away, for example, taking away a chocolate candy bar or taking away the chips. It's about offering choices. And oftentimes, without even thinking about it, we've developed an environment around ourselves where there is not a healthy choice. Every choice is an unhealthy choice. Mm-hmm. So it's about adding healthy choices into your environment. Physical environment goes the same way. Why?
And just thinking about
it.
Just
why don't
up
the
your
children
mind to think
move
about
more? Well, because when they get 2 blocks from their house, there's no more sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Now, you're a parent. Are you comfortable with that?
That's really
no,
good
then
thinking.
You put your children in the car and then you drive them to where they have to go. And these are the types of things. Our restaurants, oftentimes in our restaurants, there are not menu choices. Let's say on Tuesday, I don't want to make a healthy choice. I just don't. That's all right. Mm-hmm. But Wednesday, I do want to make a healthy choice.
And it's there.
And it's there to make.
Wonderful.
Right.
Well, we'll follow the progress. Thanks and congratulations.
Thank you.
Look forward to your big, it's November?
November 30th. We'll have our community kickoff at the Nyack Auditorium at 6:30, and so we ask everybody to join us, and we're pretty excited. That is when we will really be getting active with the initiatives in our community.
Angie Determan and Ellen Kehr, thank you very much, both.
Thank you.
It's been delightful. Back in a minute.
You can watch On Cue anytime by visiting the KSMQ TV website, ksmq.org.
And welcome back to On Cue, our show where we talk about interesting topics and connect them with interesting people. And my goodness, we have both here right now. Janet Groth, Austin native, born and raised, is now the author of a wonderful book that's getting rave reviews. Based on her career at the New Yorker magazine in New York. The book is called The Receptionist, an Education at the New Yorker. Janet Groth joins us back here in Austin. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome back to town.
Thank you, Eric. I should say that my native bornness was a few miles to the south, dare we say, in Iowa.
Oh my gosh.
St. Ansgar. But believe me, I was an Austin high school graduate. So
well,
there
we'll let
we
you
are.
stay on the show. We'll let you stay here. That's close enough. Thanks for the clarification. And congrats on the book.
Thank you.
This is a story about your life behind the desk as a receptionist at one of our nation's great signature publications, The New Yorker.
Well, that was certainly part of the rationale. There have been other people who've written about The New Yorker, goodness knows, but it's sort of like being in the Army. Everybody who goes through it has something special to tell and their own angle on it, and that's why I thought maybe people would be interested in mine.
And coming from Austin, a story is fascinating. Left the small community after graduating from Iowa originally, but then went to high school in Austin.
Yes, I did.
Then just struck out
I went
to head east after the University of Minnesota. You headed north first and then east.
Exactly. And I like to say that I believed that life began in New York as a result of one little period of my family's history in which we owned a movie theater. And it was in the 40s. People who look at, take film courses now know that film noir, the black and white films of the 40s, many of them began with aerial shots over lower Manhattan. A saxophone was playing, crime was in the streets. All of this appealed to me tremendously, and I began to believe that New York was the place to go for real life, and that's where I struck out to when I finished the University of Minnesota.
I mean, the talk of the town, as the column from the weekly magazine is called, Talk of the Town. You were living it and seeing it before it would go to print.
Well, you're right, Eric. It's true. It's a hard thing for me to regret any of the time I put in there, because it was so fruitful in personal relationships. I began to know these writers and their lives from the inside out, you might say. Writers like Muriel Spark, who wrote The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, made me her private secretary, and later when she moved to Italy, invited me to her palazzo for parties with Michelangelo, Antonioni, and all those Italian filmmakers. And that was just one little thing that she did for me. And there were people that were at the magazine whom I became very close to, and sat their children and watered their plants and became their trusted house sitters when they were away. Calvin Trillin, a wonderful writer on food and politics and murder mysteries, lots of American stories, had me sit his house when he and his family went away.
Were you capturing little news nuggets when you'd be visiting with the guests as they were coming in to be interviewed? Would you hear little things and pass them along?
I wouldn't pass them along, and that was part of my, I suppose, the secret of my success. I was a discreet repository of all of this, and I had to wait until most of these people were dead before I felt it was all right to tell what little tidbits I had picked up all those years.
Have you noticed comparing the changes in Austin when you come back versus the changes in New York in the time you were there? Have they both changed?
They have. They have. Of course, New York is in a constant state of change. There was that famous person who said, you know, it's going to be a great city if they ever finish it. But Austin has undergone tremendous changes. I come back and I remember when the streets had names instead of numbers. I can't find my way around now. Kenwood and Oakland, where are they? You know, because of the malls, which were all built up after I left, the downtown area has changed so much that I hardly recognize it. Some of the people I went to high school had businesses on Main Street that, of course, have long gone. Some of my favorite high school chums, whom I still see, the Addington twins, and there are people probably still living in Austin who remember them as cello players in the Austin's orchestra, and who have gone on to wonderful careers in law and teaching. Their mother had a little fabric shop on Main Street, Dorothy's Fabric Shop, and long gone. The town square where the city hall or county seat it now sits was a wonderful old building of brick and porticos. The public library that was had a more sort of, to my mind, welcoming portico of a kind of slanted stone classical portal through which you went, and I loved that library. I read everything in the fiction section from A through Z. I can tell you about Franz Werfel's novels, as well as Sholem Asch. That's A through W anyway.
Oh,
let me see. Anyway, I do remember fondly.
So Austin fueled maybe your desire to move on to the University of Minnesota?
I think they definitely did, and it certainly pointed me at my English major. That's, yes.
And you touched on this earlier, all the wonderful writers that you came in contact with in your time at the New Yorker, and one you just recently teamed up with up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the great Garrison Keillor,
yes.
who people may not know was a New Yorker staffer.
He was. He came a little after my time, which only whetted his curiosity about my book, apparently, when he heard that I was coming to Common Goods bookstore, his bookstore in St. Paul. He apparently volunteered to appear with me there and talk about the book, which he was very, very complimentary about, and we had a wonderful time. He came and was at the New Yorker while it was still on 43rd Street and still a kind of linoleum floored, low profile thing, very different from the Mad Men glitz.
Sure.
But you know, those advertising people, they always put on a big show, whereas the New Yorker would relish its gray walls and filing cabinets and so on.
Could you do us a favor and read a slight piece from your
I'd
book?
love
Would that
to.
be all right?
I'd love to. Here we are. This is the introduction, and this is how I got there. It all happened by the merest chance, or perhaps the heavens were aligned. In August 1957, I finished my BA at the University of Minnesota. At the same time, I received a phone call telling me of some excitement in the area, a manned balloon flight. That was from the Mesabi Range into the stratosphere, being filmed by a CBS science show. Thinking that it would advance my dream of becoming a writer, I managed to secure a temporary job as an assistant to Arthur Ziegart, the show's writer-director. It went well, and Mr. Ziegart invited me to send my resume to him as soon as I decided to come to New York. He received it 3 weeks later while he was fishing in Maine with his very good friend, E.B. White. E.B. White was then one of the best-known writers on the magazine. Viewers might remember Charlotte's Web and other things in addition to his fame as a New Yorker writer. But his shyness, I found out later, was legendary. And this interview, quite unprecedented. He seemed pained to be in the presence of anyone at all, much less a corn-fed girl from Minnesota who was looking for a job. "What kind of work do you envision doing, Miss Groth?" he asked, and I said I wanted to write, and I'd be glad of doing anything in the publishing field. And that's when he issued the famous pre-feminist question that would have greeted all bachelor's degree women who came through any publishing office: "Do you type?"
And your response to that was
I said,
wonderful.
I said I purposely didn't learn to type at a professional level because I was afraid that if I did, I would be stuck in the typing pool.
Genius. Wonderful response. Janet Groth, thank you. It's been just a wonderful pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Austin,
Thank
and
you.
Good success with your book.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
We'll be back with more On Cue. Stay with us.
Queue up your own comments for On Cue and send them to us at onq@ksmq.org.
And welcome back to On Cue. Time now for our Vision 2020 segment. Cheryl Corey is here from the Gateway Committee.
Yes.
Folks may take it for granted that we have a freeway, I-90, running through Austin or to the side of it, but that's can be a huge advantage for a community to have all that traffic there.
You're right, Eric, and thank you for inviting me today. We are actually one of the only cities in Minnesota that have 7 exits on the interstate, and that's pretty rare. So we felt like we should really monopolize that and take advantage of it, create an iconic I-90 overpass attraction representative of our community, and that's our mission statement for our goal.
And this would be something like a walkway that goes over the I-90, or for cars that just has a unique look? What would its function be?
Still to be developing. We've discussed a lot the Oasis type visitor centers that you see in larger cities like Chicago and even in Rochester, where their overheads their overpasses have lighting, and some communities have art on them, and we're working with the DOT because it cannot be distractive to driving. But we've talked any number of ways, whether it's a spam can over the highway, and we're working with the area from 4th Street Northwest to 14th Street Northwest. So there's a couple of different ways. We can't obviously gate the entire section there, but if we took one of the exits and had something where cars and bikes can actually drive to, it would be welcoming from the interstate. People would see that it's the visitor center, and it would become sort of the place to go when you're new to town, whether you need interpretive services, if you want to know about our history, art opportunities, but then it'd be a great opportunity for my staff and I to let people know what all is here, so they don't miss anything when they're in Austin.
Right, and we should point out that in your other world, you are executive director of the Convention Visitors Bureau.
That's correct.
So that's your charge, is to bring folks here to town. So might it be, when you mention Rochester, I think of skywalks.
Yes.
That are totally enclosed. Might it be something like that?
We're in the stage where we're throwing out a lot of ideas and concepts. We've had some architecture drawings made up. Nothing is set in stone yet. We're still kind of at that idea gathering stage, but it could be any of those things. It might include art of the area. It might include history of our area. There's just so many components to it that we're not quite sure yet what we want to be when we grow up, but there's a lot of potential.
How do we get them to the new Arts Center?
Exactly.
Cheryl Corey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And look forward to hearing more about it in the future. And thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to exploring more issues in our region right here on Q. I'm your host, Eric Olson.
On Q is a production of KSMQ Television in Austin, nonprofit public television.